What you said, can you expand on the part you said, kind of tech and people, or they don't want you to be yourself, or they're trying to make you yourself or something like that?
Yeah.
Because there's
So
a lot of garbage on social media today, right? It's
yeah,
like, and
yeah.
confusion.
I'm going to use him, this guy's as a specific example, just because he's in the news right now. The guy, Justin Baldoni. So he's the guy who's he was the star of this show called It Ends With Us. I'm not getting into he's in a legal battle right now where he's being accused of sexual harassment. That's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the fact that he's a male feminist who's a male model, and he has this thing called the Man Enough podcast. The Department of Homeland Security was literally funneling traffic from my podcast and from, like, say, Rollo Tomasi's podcast and other podcasts towards this Man Enough podcast that he has. We have the documentation from the DHS showing that they did this. They spent $700,000 doing this. And his podcast told men to open up and become more vulnerable. Now, I want you to consider a male model telling the average man to be more vulnerable. He explains to men that they need to express their interest in women right off the bat. So they need to go up to women and be like, I'm very physically attracted. Like, we're talking about unattractive men who are overweight, walking up to beautiful women and saying, hey, I'm attracted to you, telling them right off the bat. Now, any man who's dated in the last 20 years knows that this is absolutely terrible advice to give to men.
Oh, they're going to run away.
Of course, because he's out of touch. He's a successful Hollywood director and actor and male model explaining to men to just be themselves. This is kind of the mainstream advice that a lot of people are getting. And you have also other gaslighters like Will Hitchens or Chris GQ Perry who say things basically to gaslight women. So Chris GQ Perry has this one super viral reel where he says women can tell when you're cheating. They'll have a dream about it and they can just tell. You can never fool a woman's intuition. And of course, any man who's dated a woman for any period of time knows that women will jump to conclusions with no basis of reality whatsoever. But he's telling these women what they want to hear. So he gets 1 million likes, even though he's saying something that is objectively false. So you're getting objectively false information and extremely bad dating information from these mainstream sources. And then content like mine, which is backed up by science, is ratioed. Content like theirs is perpetuated on places like TikTok, especially TikTok. TikTok is not going to tolerate any kind of male self-improvement content whatsoever. And so you'll see that kind of content that goes on. And then that's what I'm trying to talk about before. It's like the good advice, which is men should have boundaries. I personally believe that in the majority of cases, most men find themselves to feel worthless when it comes to coming up and talking to women. The reason why there's this confusion is, Michael, is because of this. I'm going to see if I can have something here. Here we go. I have 2 remote controls. Here we go. This remote control is a small group of men at the top. These men have like unlimited options with women. Okay. These men they can date whoever they want. They tend to make more money. Some of them are good looking. They have higher status. This is the other 80% of men. See, this is a bigger remote. This is the other 80% of men, okay? These men are 9 times more likely to take their own lives than the general population. These men are far more likely to become homeless or suffer from mental illness, and these men make about $59,000 a year on average. These men, if they're lucky, the bottom third of men have 1 or 0 sexual partners in the last 2 or 3 years. This is who I'm talking about, okay? So you see there's 2 groups of men here. Do you understand?
Yeah.
When women complain about men being narcissists, men being fuckboys, or men being cheaters, they're only talking about these men, this small group of men here, okay? When I say, hey, men are suffering, women don't understand what I'm saying because they're just thinking about these men here who aren't suffering, because these are the men that they notice. This is the guy who gave them their Chick-fil-A order. This is the guy who gave them their McDonald's order. This is the cashier at Kroger's. This is the mailman. The women don't see these men. These men are here suffering. If you don't believe me, you should listen to Richard Reeves or Scott Galloway. This large cohort of men who's suffering, who women are just completely ignore, this is who I'm talking to. So when I tell these men stop being worthless, $6.6 billion, that's how much revenue OnlyFans made last year. These are men giving up their money to women who don't care about them whatsoever. $6.6 billion. That tells you men feel like they're worthless. On dating apps, 80% of men are deemed unattractive. This is the 80% of men that are deemed unattractive. Another way to say it is these men are invisible. These men are invisible in a large part to society, but specifically to women. This is who I'm talking to. This is the group of men I'm talking to. The problem is when I give these men advice to stand up for yourself, to have boundaries, to not chase after women, to women, they hear me talking to this group of men and it sounds toxic, but I'm not talking to this group of men. This group of men doesn't need a self-improvement coach. This group of men does not come and join my program. Chad Thundercock and the fucking VIP host who's like super good looking and is a male model, he does not need my program. It's this group of men, okay? It's Jose and it's Jose from Mexico and Sandeep from New Delhi who come over here. They're 5'4" and women don't even fucking notice them. These guys are the ones who come to my program. And I have to help these guys develop boundaries and masculine qualities so that they have a better chance of attracting women. When people don't understand what I'm saying, they misinterpret it because they see men as a monolithic group. All men are cheaters. All men are narcissists. All men are trash. These are two groups of men. You need to understand, if you don't grasp this concept of the bifurcation of men, then none of this self-improvement stuff makes any sense to you. And you,
Well, I think
because you don't. Go ahead.
going back to the stuff about the media, right? They're creating so many illusions, right? So it does a huge disservice to the main group of guys. It doesn't give them any potential to move forward, right? Because it's almost like you're saying, oh, if media is saying to those guys of like, oh, a guy should be this, that, whatever, and the guy's like, well, how do I get there? And then you're grouping them all together, and then you know what I mean. So it doesn't give them. You have to have anything that's good that's going to serve people is going to have a path for anybody, right? It's going to have the guys at the top, they're going to be able to continuously improve, and the guys at the bottom, there's going to be a path as well too, right? So it's kind of like when we generalize men and women, because there's good and bad men and there's good and bad women, right? It doesn't really, it's sort of like putting one side down doesn't really bring up the other, right? So I think the clarity really should be is like, okay, well, number one, I think men need a better sense of reality too, right? So the more you throw in, you said OnlyFans and all this stuff, the more you throw in this temptation, distracting, all this junk that just weakens them, that's not really serving men. And it's like, well, who benefits off of that? The people who are making money off that, of course. So it's good to have, I always say men need other strong men. So if you're not yet a strong man, go look at the guy that inspires you and say, hey, what does he have? What can I learn? Reach out to that guy, right?
Right. But there's also specific techniques. There's specific things he needs to learn. Like, for instance, men should be in the gym on a regular basis. This idea, so again, it is blue pill ideology, if you want to call it that, right? The progressive ideology, you're good enough. You don't need to go to the gym. It's a man going to a therapist telling him, you don't need to worry about performing at work. You don't have to go to the gym. Become very comfortable with the way you look. Not recognizing. So this is another thing that I talk about that's very controversial.
It's all irresponsibility, yeah.
Yeah, but here's another thing I talk about that's very controversial. This concept that I got a lot of progressives come up with, which is this idea of gender norms and gender roles. So the idea is basically that it's men who are enforcing gender roles on women and men enforcing gender roles on themselves. But the reality is, the reason why I go to the gym, the reason why I compete with other men, the reason why I make more money, the reason why I try to garner more status, the reason why I garner higher sexual selection is because that's what women choose. Meaning gender roles are not perpetrated by men. Gender roles are almost entirely perpetrated by women. Women are the ones who, again, when they're surveyed, you don't have to disagree with me. Tell me that I'm a bigot. Tell me whatever name you want to call me. Go look at any evolutionary psychology survey when you find out that women are far more interested in how much a man makes than the other way around. And then in egalitarian nations where women actually make more, and I'm talking about Scandinavian countries, where women actually make on average more than men, they still look for men who make even more money than themselves. So this is not a cultural phenomenon. This is a function of genetics. When you see this, and then you understand, for instance, I'll give you an example. Think about these concepts or these attributes: aggressiveness, assertiveness, ambition, and dominance. Aggressiveness, assertiveness, ambition, and dominance. These are all traits that women on average tend to find more attractive in men. If you were to say there's a patriarchy, what are the attributes that would perpetuate a patriarchy? Aggressiveness, assertiveness, ambition, and dominance. Which are the men that women are rewarding with sex? Men who show aggressive, assertive, ambitious, and dominant traits. So if women wanted patriarchy to go away, here's how you do it. I ask every woman this: is there a guy in your life that you just put in the friend zone? Is there a guy who's like, he was just a little too nice, that you didn't want to have sex with him? You just saw him as just a friend. You thought he was a great guy, but you just didn't feel anything for him. Ladies, if you would just start having sex with that man instead of the guy who really turned you on, the patriarchy would disappear. Because what's happening is, as women continue to reward the men who are aggressive, assertive, ambitious, and dominant with more sex, they have more children that are more aggressive, assertive, ambitious, and dominant. And of course, then there's a patriarchy. So again, these roles that we see where men have to compete with other men for access to resources and access to sexual market value, that entire marketplace is perpetuated by women's selectivity. And it's so funny because it's women who are complaining about it. But again, one more time, when women are complaining, who are they complaining about? Are they complaining about this guy right here, the mailman? Are they complaining about the overweight guy at the end of the bar, you know what I'm saying, who's in his 50s, who hasn't been with a woman in 16 years? Are they complaining about these men? They don't even notice these men. They're complaining about this guy, the guy with the Bugatti who's dating 16 girls at the same time and leading them all on. This is the one that they're complaining about. And they don't understand that there's two groups of men here. They don't differentiate between the two. And so because they do that, they continually reward what they consider to be bad behavior with more sexual access. And then they keep perpetuating the entire patriarchy that they complain about. Click the link in the description below, and I'll send you my high status networking playbook for free so you can start meeting high quality women today.